Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Masters Initial Research Show. That's right, we've made it to the first major of the PGA Tour season, the most famous tournament in golf, at least in my opinion. And we arrive this week with quite a bit of momentum, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail. Yours truly had the outright on Akshay Bhatia after a very nerve-wracking final 9 holes where Denny McCarthy went nuclear, set all sorts of records in terms of fewest putts and scoring and whatnot. Took several years off my life, but we did get Akshay Bhatia across the finish line for our second win of the year, backing up Hideki at the Genesis. So 2 wins this year here at Calls, and arriving to the Masters with a lot of momentum. DFS was fairly solid as well if you ignore the full Rory fade, the recommendation of Sam Ryder, but had enough Akshay Bhatia, had several good plays. I was really high on Max Homa, who played pretty well, Spieth, who played very well. Overall, it was just a fantastic week. And especially a great Sunday for the Valero Texas Open. And hopefully you enjoyed the success as well. So I'd love to hear from others in the community who had success. So make sure you put that in chat or reach out to me on social media. But we are here for the Masters. And I'm quite excited. It's going to be a great week. So let's get right into it, shall we? All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. Look, there are a lot of great golf analytics tools, no doubt about that. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. It's going to give you course history, prior leaderboards, strokes gained on any metric that you can imagine. And it's going to give you all of this power at your fingertips to be able to hit the Akshay Bhatias, to know who to play for this week's Masters, all of that and more. So go check out fantasynational.com. You will not regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where every week I post research on the PGA Tour. That will come out Tuesday this week. That will come out a day later. So a lot of Masters content has already been put out there. I normally put out my research Monday afternoon. I'm actually going to be out of town playing golf tomorrow, so will not have that research for you tomorrow. It will be out Tuesday. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, generally around the course, the previous winners at that course, the patterns that they display leading up to their win, the players who in the field fit that criteria. If you want to see that research week in and week out on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in DFS for the week's tournament. If you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X as well. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and he continues to update you throughout the week with his own version of course history, recent form, all of that. It's a great way to get your week started. Can't say enough good things about working with Gabe like I have for the past year and a half or so. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, by the way, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening as we continue the DFS talk over there. After calls, we talk about game theory, what part of the price board we're focused on, who we're playing, scary fades, pivots that we like, all of that. So you don't want to miss out on that discussion, and that only happens over in his Substack chat. So make sure you are following him over on social media and subscribe to his article. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Indeed, it is Masters Week. So anything you want to talk about Masters, we're here for. Who's your national champion? Do you have UConn or Purdue? tomorrow? Are you alive in any of your bracket pools? Who's the winner for the Masters early on this week? How was your Valero Texas Open? Would love to hear about others in the community that have success. But we're here for the Masters, so let's do our initial research for the 2024 Masters. And we start, as we always do, on a Sunday evening over at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. And don't mind me as I clean off these glasses here. We are at famed Augusta National in Augusta, Georgia. Very, very long course, as is tradition. They do make subtle changes year over year, but is generally played to this 7,500 plus number. Nothing to do with Architect in terms of in Fantasy National. This is a Dr. Alistair McKenzie and Bobby Jones design way back in 1933. You see par 72, 7,500, and I'm just going to round to 7,550 yards. So long course, lots of elevation change. I don't think the casual fan realizes just how much elevation change there is at Augusta National. Lots of undulation in the fairways. The greens are sloped and extremely fast, which we'll talk about tonight and throughout the week. But lots of elevation change as well. Very long course. Green size is slightly larger than the average tour size of 6,000. These are about 6,500 square feet, but they play much, much smaller. Again, with the runoffs around the green, the undulation and the tiers that are in the greens, they're generally pretty darn firm. They play much, much smaller than what the actual green size is. But very, very forgiving fairways. Some of the widest fairways on tour. This really can be a second shot course and around the green course, unless you are extremely wayward, in which you're in the pine straw. That's a whole nother issue. But very, very forgiving fairways. Not a whole lot of bunkers, to be honest with you. Only 44 throughout the course. Most of them in the landing zones off the drive, and then whatever greens protect bunkers. You do have 5 holes with water in play. The greens are pure bent grass. We're not dealing with any Poa Trivialis overseed, any bent and Poa Anna. We are on pure bent this week, as we customarily are at Augusta National. The fairways are rye overseed, second cut rye overseed, but you see how low that second cut is. There is not a lot of rough around Augusta National. If you are wayward enough with your drive, you're going to find the pine straw, and that brings in a whole lot of, whole host of other issues. But another thing to note with Augusta National is that even though the course plays long, it'll actually play a little bit longer, because this is one of the very few PGA tournaments where the grounds crew mows the grass from green to tee, meaning that is going to minimize the amount of rollout that players receive on their drives. Don't know if there's going to be any notes in particular about that. This is just kind of some statistics around Augusta. You see smallest greens. It's actually some of the smallest greens, at least on tour, because you have several venues that are very, very large. Longest courses. This is the third longest course we'll see on the calendar this season. Of course, Torrey Pines, notoriously the longest, and then Kapalua. But as far as Augusta National and the Masters, that's about what you need to know. Bobby Jones design, very, very long course, and will play to all of its yardage due to that mowing that I just mentioned, how the mowing is from green to tee, so cut into the players, not with the players. Greens are going to be slightly larger than average on the PGA Tour, but play much, much, much smaller. than their listed size. The fairways are very, very forgiving, very, very little rough, and what rough there is cut very short, not even an inch and a half long. So it's almost fairway to pine straw, generally speaking, or bunker, water, whatever. But there's a look at Augusta National in terms of a GCSAA tournament fact sheet. We'll close that out and we move to Fantasy National, as he has said. I say he as in Moose, but the team at Fantasy National has went ahead and set their customary green and gold for Masters Week. Another small little perk that you get if you are a member at Fantasy National, which I highly, highly recommend you do. But for the players in the field this week, our top performers in 2024: Scotty, Xander, Wyndham Clark, Sahith Theegala, Matthew Pavone, 5th in terms of total performance on the PGA Tour. Important to note that. Only PGA Tour. Sam Burns, Siwoo Kim, Ludwig Aubert, Shane Lowry, and Stefan Jaeger are our top 10 in terms of total performance. I want to highlight that fact for you all right up front this week, and I will casually remind you throughout the week that I only gather statistics from the PGA Tour. There are several places that gather live statistics or DP World Tour statistics, and I'm going to suggest you go find as much information as you can about that. I do not collect any of that data. I am vaguely aware of some results on live, but nothing to the extent that you're going to be able to find elsewhere. I focus on the PGA Tour, so I just want to put that out there at the beginning of this week, and that's why you're going to see players like Bryson, Sergio, DJ, Brooks. These live players are going to be pretty far down in my rankings when they come out Wednesday. They're going to be further down, in these top 10 lists because they're not on the PGA Tour. I just collect PGA Tour data. So with that long-winded thing out of the way, what we do know, of course, about Augusta National, extremely long course. So I will remove the 2024 filter, go back 2 years, as that is the longest time frame we can look at in Fantasy National. In the past 2 years, our top performers in the Masters this year on long courses measured over 7,400 yards: Scotty Scheffler, Sung Jae, Xander, Jon Rahm, Wyndham Clark, Max Homa, Corey Connors, Colin Morikawa, Will Zalatoris, and Sahith Theegala are our top 10 on long courses. It's important to note that Akshay is not loaded in yet. He will be by tomorrow night's show, but Akshay is not in here. He might move into the top here on long courses, especially with his win at the Valero Texas Open. But there's our top performers on long courses. Very quickly, just because we're here, we'll go to the course breakdown here momentarily. I do want to show you the historic conditions. In the last 2 years, every single round has been difficult. So all 8 rounds the past couple of years have been difficult. Generally, the Masters is pretty darn difficult. You do get some very good scores if the wind is down, if it's more soft and receptive, and we'll look at the weather starting tomorrow. But for tonight's purposes, until we really examine the weather, I'm going to be using the difficult relative to par filter, as when all other things being equal, I truly believe the Masters is a very, very difficult test of golf. So in the past 2 years, when rounds are difficult relative to par, our top performers have been Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Will Zalatoris, Victor Hovland, Cam Smith, our first live note or live player to crack the top 10, as we are using a little bit more historical data with this filter. Patrick Cantlay, Jon Rahm, Xander, and Tommy Fleetwood are our top 10 when rounds have been difficult relative to par. Okay, I'm going to remove that filter. I am going to bring this back to 2024, but as I do that, we're going to be getting prepared to go to the course breakdown in Fantasy National. Taking a look at Augusta National in terms of a scorecard and graphical view. One of the big things that jumps out to you, the par 5s are quite scoreable. 3% eagle rate, 2.5% eagle rate. Only a 1% on the extremely uphill par 5 8th, I believe. And then 1.5 on the par 5 2nd. So some eagles do pop up around Augusta National. In order to determine how difficult a course is, we'll look where par falls. And if par falls on the 9th or 10th most difficult hole, that's generally about an average difficulty course. Well, you see the 9th and 10th are still quite a bit over par. You have to get to the 14th most difficult, or to say it another way, the 5th easiest hole. 18, 17, 16, 15, 14. 5th easiest hole before you get par. This is very difficult. Very difficult. The par 4 11th plays to 4/10 of a shot over par. Par 4 10th, a quarter. Par 4 18th, a quarter of a shot. Quarter of a shot. The very long par 3 4th. Quarter of a shot. 3/10 of a shot. Just lots of bogeys around Augusta National. Not necessarily a whole lot of doubles, although the par 4 11th does yield a double bogey, a little bit more than 5% of the time. Just lots of bogeys. Generally speaking, outside of the par 5s, pars are good scores around Augusta National. It is a major after all. The length of the course comes into these very long par 4s. 465, the finishing hole, plays a lot longer than its listed yardage because it is all uphill on its second shot. Par 4 11th, 520 yards, 495, 460, 450, 495, 445, which you can see easily going into that 450 to 500 bucket as well. The par 5s aren't necessarily short either. They're not extremely long like we had at the Valero, but they're still not short. 575, 570, 545 the shortest, 550. You do have a couple of longer par 3s, but generally speaking, the length of the course comes into these very long par 4s that are very, very challenging. The first, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth most difficult holes on the course, all in this 450 to 500 range bucket of par 4s. Just extremely difficult. Moving to strokes gained by shot type and strokes gained by hole by par. We don't get any strokes gained by shot type, as all of that data is proprietary to the Masters. But strokes gained by hole by par for our top 10s, you can see par 5s are getting taken advantage of, but it's pretty even among the top 10s between the 3s, 4s, and 5s. 3s being the least, par 5s being the most, but overall relatively even. As we've seen some graphs even lately that the par 5s get a huge emphasis, or perhaps par 4s are diminished or whatnot, but fairly even here. We move to top 5s. Par 3s start to lag a little bit behind. Par 5s maybe jump a little bit, but not necessarily too much away from the winners. And then from the par 4s. And then for your winners, the par 3s really do lag behind a little bit, as the par 4s are played extremely well, and of course, most professionals are going to be taking advantage of the par 5s. So par 5s and par 4s are what has been generally most important for our winners here at Augusta National. We move to hole composition, a little bit different look into Augusta National. Our par 3s, gosh dang, I can't talk. Two pretty darn short par 3s, in between 150 and 175. We got a medium length and the very, very long par 3 4th, measuring 240. So a decent range of par 3s here. And we saw this at Valero, but when we dug into the data on Monday night, in which we'll do obviously for the Masters tomorrow, that there was a range of par 3s that certainly, I guess, revealed themselves to be the most important. So we'll see if there is a range tomorrow in the data dive, if any range of par 3s really lends itself to more success than others. We have, I'm going to say, a semi-drivable par 4. I say semi-drivable, it's the par 4 third, 350 yards. They can shorten it a little bit, and players who are ultra aggressive will go for that green. I don't know the success rate of driving that green. It is semi-drivable, but for the longest of long hitters. A few short par 4s from 400 to 450, but the majority of the par 4s, as we discussed, are in this 450 to 500 range. And then we have the monster par 4 11th measuring at 520. Our par 5s, one pretty short one at 540 on the scorecard, and then 3 that fall between 550 and 600. All right, looking at scoring distribution, you see several doubles, and then the bogeys are more than the birdies. Again, just a testament to how difficult Augusta National is. So you total the scores that are above par and then compare them against the scores that are under par. You have more scores that are over par. Obviously, it's going to play difficult. Historic cut line. We've seen this a couple of times in 2024 with a couple of the signature events. The cut line is top 50 and ties, and anyone within 10 shots of the lead after Friday. So generally speaking, you're hovering in this +4 to about +6 range. It's been as high as +9. It's been as low as +1 when it played, easy by Masters terms, but more average than, say, difficult. But generally you're looking around this +4 to +6 range for the average cut here at the Masters. Driving accuracy, much higher here. Again, these fairways are very, very wide. Yes, there's some undulation to them, but very, very wide fairways, pretty darn forgiving in that regard. However, the green in regulation percentage slightly above 60%, which is well below the PGA Tour average. So these greens are not easy to hit for a variety of factors. Firmness, the size, which they play a lot smaller due to undulation and tearing, false fronts and slopes. So greens are not easy to hit here at Augusta. Scrambling, also much less successful around Augusta National than it is at the average tour event by about a good 5% or so. And then 3 putts per round due to just the sheer speed of these greens. You're gonna get a lot of 3 putts. So 3 putt avoidance is something that we're definitely going to want to look at throughout the week. Whether that's on pure bent or lightning bent, we're just going to want to look at a lot of 3 putt avoidance, and lag putting is certainly a skill that you need around Augusta National. So there's a look at the Masters and Augusta National from a scorecard and graphical view. We move back to the players in the field this week. We'll look at all of the strokes gained. Again, we don't get strokes gained in terms of at the Masters since it is proprietary, but all 4 facets of the game are going to be tested. The least of which is the off the tee, considering how wide these fairways are, but I still imagine I will have a factor of off the tee in, whether that's accuracy or distance or whatnot. We'll probably still have some off the tee in the final mixed condition model come Wednesday. But our top off the tee players in the field for the Masters this week in the 2024 season: Scotty, Rory, Xander, Siwoo Kim, Chris Kirk, Corey Connors, Sahith Theegala, Wyndham Clark, Cameron Young, Ben An, and Minwoo Lee are our top 10 in terms of off the tee. We'll go into a lot more tomorrow, looking at perhaps off the tee on long courses, maybe off the tee when it's difficult. But we're just going to get a big picture view tonight, since it is just the initial research show. So there's our top off the tee players. Top approach players in the field this week, this calendar year: Scotty, Corey Connors, Shane Lowry, Tony Finau, Nick Taylor, Cameron Young, Justin Thomas, Jake Knapp, Will Zalatoris, and Xander are our top 10 there. Around the green: Hideki, Scotty, Xander, Lucas Glover, Siwoo Kim, J-Day, Adam Schenk, Terrell Hatton, Taylor Moore, and Tony Finau. And then we have not been on bent in 2024, so I am going to have to back this out to the last 2 years. And we're going to look at bent greens, preferably lightning, but I don't know if we're going to have enough rounds. Not a whole lot here. You do have 21 from Sungjae, which is the Memorial. Of course, the U.S. Open last year at, I believe it was LA Country Club. I can double check that, yeah. Were bent. Of course, the Masters. So not a whole lot in terms of a sample size, but if you go back and check the historic conditions, they've been lightning. Regardless of how easy the tournament was, it's always been lightning. So small sample size as is, I think that is the way we want to look at putting this week. So your top performers on lightning bent greens the past couple of years, no surprise here: Denny McCarthy, all-world putter in of himself, but really showed out at the Memorial when he lost in a playoff to Victor Hovland last year. Harris English and Terrell Hatton, Eric Cole, JT Poston, Cam Smith, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Danny Willett, and Minwoo Lee are our top 10 on lightning bent greens the past couple of years. I will say, don't take this as gospel, as this sample size is quite a bit smaller than I would like it to be. It is what it is. Let's see. We'll remove that. Actually, no. You know what? I talked about it. Let's go ahead and go into the putting tab. We'll take a look at a couple of things here, and then look at the tournament history, and then finish the show off with the early look. But since I was talking about how important three-putt avoidance is and lag putting, let's take a look at three-putt avoidance on lightning bent greens the past couple of years. Your top three-putt avoiders: Cam Smith, Danny Willett, Adam Schenk, JT Poston, Cameron Young, Shane Lowry, Lucas Glover, Justin Rose, Will Zalatoris, and Rory are your top 10 three-putt avoiders on lightning bent greens the past couple of years. I'll remove those. Let's go ahead and bring this back into the 2024 season. 2024, 36 rounds. You're going to have to score on these par fives. You just got to here at Augusta. So, your top par 5 performers in the field this week at Augusta. Nick Dunlap is our number 1 par 5 performer. Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Minwoo Lee, Eric Van Rooyen, Matt Fitzpatrick, Tony Finau, Xander, Will Zalatoris, and Patrick Cantlay. All right. Don't want to get too much or go too much into it, as we'll really dig into this tomorrow in the Data Dive show. But this is a good start, I think, to your week of preparation with all 4 of the strokes gained. Me personally, I would highlight the approach and the around the green. Look at par 5, and then you absolutely want to have some 3-putt avoidance and lag putting. So I think that's a good way to start your research this week. But let's move to the tournament history tab, or the strokes gained total page view here in Fantasy National. This is performance at Augusta and the strokes gained here at Augusta National. It's important to note that throughout this week, me personally, I'm going to ignore Dustin Johnson's fall win in the fall of 2020. It is such an outlier in terms of Masters historically. Played in the fall for one. It was really darn easy because a lot of the grass was dormant and just different. A lot of scoring records were set that year. It was just completely different than what a typical Masters tournament is. So I don't factor in the 2020 fall Masters into a lot of the data that I collect. I just don't do it. And again, I'm just putting that out there up front this week before there's any confusion. But in the past 4 editions of the Masters, again, taking away 2021 or the 2020 fall, John Rahm is our strokes gained total leader, also our defending champion. Did have a middling finish 2 years ago, but a top 5 and another top 10. He's generally played very, very well here at Augusta. Scotty Scheffler also has played very well. Top 10 last year, winner 2 years ago, another top 20. Hideki, winner 3 years ago, 2019. Tiger and his great comeback to golf. So some of our top performers here, Xander has been very good outside of a missed cut in 2022. Cam Smith has been very good here. Very middling last year, but has been solid otherwise. DJ, Patrick Reed's a former Masters champion. Brooks has been all or nothing. Runner-up last year. Runner-up in 2019 to Tiger, but 2 missed cuts as well. So he's been very, very boom or bust. Will Zalatoris, in all of his completed Masters, has been very good. Runner-up, another top 10. Did have to withdraw with injury last year. Colin Morikawa has been solid as well. Some others of note. Finau's been more middling, but still 4 for 4 and making the cut. Rory, of course, trying to complete the Grand Slam. Very, very hit or miss, like Brooks. Runner-up to Scotty. 2 missed cuts. Victor Hovland, Shane Lowry's been pretty good, especially in the last 3 years. So there's a look at the players who have played pretty darn well. See, Tagala top 10 in his debutante year. And then the players who have not, players who have not played well. The usual suspects, the lifetime players, since they are former Masters champions, Olazabal and VJ. Terrell Hatton actually has not been all that great. He does have 1 top 20, but pretty poor otherwise. Max Homa has struggled around Augusta National. Important to note that even though he is still an amateur, Stuart Hagestad is not a debutante. He's not a debutante, so quite an intriguing play perhaps in DFS or some prop bets on low amateur, as he has played Augusta twice before. He also played in 2017 when he was very, very young and made the cut that year and then missed the cut 2 years ago. So intriguing, certainly very intriguing there. Let's see, Grillo pretty far back. Adam Scott's been solid, just kind of middling, but negative in terms of strokes gained. Bryson and his comments have come back to bite him since he made those. Sergio, since his win, has been pretty darn poor. And there's all the list of players that have not played well recently at the Masters. And then your debutantes, Ludwig Aubert, Wyndham Clark, Eric Cole, the Latin American amateur, Santiago de la Fuente, Nick Dunlap, of course, a debutante as he was an amateur earlier this year, Eckroat, Hitsatsune, Hodges, Højgaard, Jaeger, Knapp, Malnati, McCarthy, Grayson Murray, Adam Schenk, Camilo Villegas, I think are all making their Masters debut. Villegas might have played before, but at least he hasn't played in the last 5 years. Now our amateurs, Neil Shipley, Jasper Stubbs, Christo Lamprecht, who came onto the scene at the Open Championship last year, just demolishes the golf ball off the tee, hits it, only slight exaggeration, about 6,000 yards off the tee. Just a complete masher. Quite interesting to see him go around Augusta. But there's a look at our amateurs in the field this week. And with that, we're going to go ahead and move to Microsoft Excel in the early look file. Normally, I only go back 5 years. However, with this being a very limited field year over year, and we have very consistent data on the Masters going back to 2012 in Fantasy National, this is performance at the Masters going all the way back to 2012. Again, minus Dustin Johnson's winning year in the fall of 2020, since it is such a complete outlier in terms of Masters tournaments. But you see, Will Zalatoris has averaged a 4th place finish in his 2 tries, a 2nd and a 6th. See, Tagala top 10 last year as a debutante. Scotty Scheffler averages a 10th place finish. Jordan Spieth, Masters champion, he averages a 12th place finish in 9 tries here. And then our absolute debutantes, Adam Schenk, Batia, Eckroat, McCarthy. So Camilo Villegas has played before. Good to know. Eric Cole, Murray, Knapp, Hodges, Aubert, Pavone, Dunlap, Nick Taylor, Højgaard, Malnati, Hitsatsune, and Jaeger. Our absolute debutantes, and some of the amateurs are in here as well. Just out of curiosity, there's Villegas. Missed the cut. Finished 67th in his 1 year when he did play. Look, behind an average finish of Olaf Albel even. Okay, let's see. Taking a look here. Of course, we don't have any strokes gained. Still, it's proprietary. For the players who have played the Masters the best, and I am probably going... I'll keep in the players who have only played it one time. Just be cognizant of the players who have only played it once. But, look, distance seems to be a thing. I mean, Morikawa is never really about distance. Spieth's generally not about distance, although he, to quote himself, was driving the piss out of it at the Valero. But all of these players are positive in terms of distance, and that's relative to the field. So distance absolutely is a small factor here at Augusta National. Fairways, maybe not so much just because they're so wide and forgiving, but you see the heavy concentration of green in both good drives gained and in greens, in which a good drive gained defined by Fantasy National is a player has hit the fairway or they are hitting the green in regulation from the rough. So looking at the greens in regulation here, I mean, even Tony Finau, who is slightly above field average, negative in good drives but positive in the greens. Really, we only have one player who's been bad at greens at Augusta National in his career, and that's Ricky. Everybody else has been pretty darn solid. Some exceptional, like Scotty and Tom Kim, who finished top 20 last year, hit a lot of greens. Justin Rose, former Masters champion, has been very good at hitting greens. I mean, even further down here, Olesen, he's played here 3 times. He's been very good. Justin Thomas has played very, very well, or at least hit greens at in a large clip in his Masters career, which I meant to mention this last week and just got straight into the Valero. But if you have not noticed, or if you've not heard, Bones Mackay and Justin Thomas have parted ways. supposedly amicable, but Bones Mackay is no longer on Justin Thomas's bag. I am not sure who is going to caddy for Justin Thomas this week, but just in case you weren't aware, Bones Mackay is not on Justin Thomas's bag anymore. But looking, and as far as stats, pretty clearly greens in regulation here in terms of the players who have played the best around Augusta, and you see quite a bit of orange and red. Players who are not hitting greens generally are not playing well around here. Moving into scoring, not a whole lot of eagles. I mean, Tom Kim had a few seemingly last year. And you're going to always have a pretty high concentration of birdies gained. I mean, these guys are generally rising on the leaderboard anyway. But look at the much more consistent metric. Not a single player negative in terms of bogey avoidance until you come down all the way to Patrick Reed. So the top 28 players in terms of average finish, the top 28 have been positive relative to the field in bogey avoidance. A huge facet of Augusta National. Pars are great scores around Augusta National, so if you're able to avoid bogeys, you're gaining a lot on the field. Early on in your week, and we'll really emphasize this tomorrow when we go into the data, dive deep into the data, but also look at bogey avoidance. Moving into par 3s, 4s, and 5s, and that'll be the end of the show since we don't have proximities and putting. Par 3s, as I mentioned, they don't factor in a whole lot. Not a whole lot here. Now, Morikawa's played them well. Sahith Theegala's played them well, but you see a few players negative or right at field average. Tom Kim did not play them well at all. It did not prevent him from doing very well last year. Justin Rose, who's been very good at the Masters. He's been average at the par 3s. Victor, 4 for 4 here. He's been negative on these par 3s. They're not going to carry a whole lot of weight. I am interested in seeing if a range develops as the most important, but at least for tonight, moving into tomorrow for your research, par 3s aren't carrying a whole lot. The par 4s do. Par 4s absolutely do. You see Will Zalatoris has just demolished the par 4s. Sahith Theegala was fairly average at them last year, but Scheffler's been good. Spieth's been good. Rahm. It's where Tom Kim made up a lot of his strokes on the field last year. Justin Rose has been fantastic at the par 4s. Again, not a single player negative in terms of par 4 performance until you come down to Adam Hadwin, who's 28th. Top 26 in terms of average finish have all been positive in par 4 performance. And you see where a lot of it is. It's right here in this 450 to 500, which makes a lot of sense. And a little bit in the 400 to 450 to be fair too, but majority of the par 4s fall into this range, and I'm pretty confident that's the range we're going to focus on when we dig into the data. Lastly, par 5s, got to play them well. Again, not a single player negative until you get down to Adam Scott all the way down here. So the top 25, 24 in terms of average finish are all positive in par 5s as well. It looks like it's the 550 to 600, which 3 of the 4 fall into that range. But it looks like just all par 5s, to be honest with you. Theegala, where he made up a lot of his strokes last year in his debutante year. Scotty's been very good at them. Tony Finau's been very good at them. Victor and Ricky. Rahm has been good. Spieth's been good. So there's a look at a player's performance at Augusta going back to 2012. That's just how far back Fantasy National goes. So as far as tomorrow, we'll be looking at course factors, talking about what, as we dig into the data, what really, really matters around Augusta. We'll talk about some winter form, and we'll cover the winter matrix as well. I'll give you an inside look to the research that I'll post on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening, or whatnot. But that's going to be it for the show this evening. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching, listening, and supporting the channel by liking the video and videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Wouldn't be able to do this without your all's support by doing all those things. Again, would love to hear about any success that the community had for the Valero Texas Open. Hopefully you followed and had a little bit of Akshay Bhatia, especially in an outright. Maybe you played a lot of Rory. You had some Spieth. I had a little bit of Denny McCarthy in my lineups that pushed me over the top in DFS. But obviously the big thing for the week was having the Akshay outright. Would love to hear about any and all success that members of the community have. So reach out to me in the comments of the show, of the video, or on social media. Would love to hear it. Would love to be able to shout out members of the community. But thanks for tuning in and watching and the support. Love what I do. Taking a look at in-depth sports statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees. Trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. I will be live tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I had to think about that. Eastern Daylight for the Data Dive show. So for all the wagers you made this past week for the Valero Texas Open, for all the DFS contests you played this past week for the Valero Texas Open, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.